Hello everyone, it's Jarrett Moore with the Enterprise DNA team. In today's video, we're going to look at another DAX function called values. Now, the reason why I have this PBIX file up is before I had, in some previous videos, I did some videos on treat as versus use relationship, which allows you to create measures based on either inactive or no relationships between your fact table and the date table. But the reason why I bring up the values function today is I don't know if you're like me, but in a lot of the models that I deal with in the industry I build reports for, I have a fact table over here. And in this example, we'll call it the jobs table. And as we scroll down here, you can see the different date functions. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's about 10, 12. There's about 15 or 16 dates as we scroll through down here throughout this model in my fact table. And sometimes that can make it challenging to create measures that need to include the date table. Or if I want to do just as a date range and say, how many jobs were, like in this example, had a receive date, had an estimate approved date, and also had a started date, and just do that by a date range. So, within this date range right here, how many jobs had a date here, and a date here that fell within that range there. And that can be pretty difficult to do if you don't know how to do. Well, this is an example of how you can do this to actually create this. So how I came up with this measure is what we'll go into. But before I do that, I want to take you over to the web and let's have a look at the Microsoft documentation on the values function. And just like always, I'll include a link to this in the description below. As we scroll down here, the main thing that I kind of want to point out here is show you kind of the example here at the bottom here. Here's an example where we're going to count rows, and basically we only want to count rows of the values of the internet sales US dollars table for this sales order number, and this gives you a little example of what this is. But once again, the description to this will be in the link below. Let's head back on over to Power BI desktop. Now we'll go over how I actually came up with the measure for this. And what I did here is I just created two measures. One to actually count the number of jobs. So the actual job count of each one of these jobs that had all three of these dates within this date range. Then I also wanted to create a measure over here based on the, if I open up this and go on the actual, well, this is on the estimate approved, but it's also on the total estimate. So what I'll do here to make this a little bit easier, actually we'll show that on the other page here. So what I did here in this, so I'll just go ahead and show you each one of these measures and break it down for you. So the first one, let's go over how I came up with the actual job count. So if we open this up a little bit more, use calculate, and I wanted to count rows of the jobs table. And then I wanted to filter by the values of the receive date. And then I only wanted to count the number of jobs that had a receive date that was less than or equal to the max date in our date range. And then I also only wanted to see the jobs that were greater than or equal to the min of the date range that we have on the page here. So basically what those two rows of DAX is asking for is just, how many jobs that, had a receive date within the date range that we have selected on the page. And then basically it's pretty much the same code kind of copied over for each one of the following dates. So I did the same thing for the estimate approved. How many jobs had an estimate approved date within that date range. And then at the bottom here, I did the same thing. Is just use that started date only wanted to see jobs that had a start date in the date range that was shown on the page. And then this gave us a value of all those jobs that met that criteria. So basically for all of the date range that we're showing here on the page was all of 2020. So in 2020, there were 57 jobs that met that criteria. So now, once that I had that measure, all I really had to do was just use a measure branching technique, is basically just copy and paste that formula instead of actually counting the rows for the jobs table. I actually had to do a sum of the actual total estimates. So if I open this one up, in the actual values, you'll see that it looks very similar to that job count. So all of this from right here down is the same. The only thing that was different is at the top here, I'm just calculating the sum of the total estimates. So instead of just counting the number of jobs, now I want to sum the total amount of estimates for each one of those jobs that had a received date, had an estimate approved date, and had a started date within that date range that we're showing here on the page. And then what we come up with here is it showed at the bottom that we had 57 jobs totaling 378,000 and change in total estimates. So now the next thing that I had to do is I actually had to go over and test this out to see if this was bringing back the correct results. So what I did was I created a page over here called the testing page. As this opens up, now that it's loaded up, what we'll do here is we can see when I highlight this table here that all the fields that I brought in were everything. It was from my facts table called jobs here. I just brought in the estimate approved date. I brought in the job number. I brought in the received date, the started date, and then that total estimates value right here. And then what I'll do is I'll open up this filters pane to actually show you what I did in order to validate this information. So what we see here in the filters pane is what I did for each one of these date fields. For example, estimate approved, you can see is on or after the 1st of January of 2020 and is on or before December 31st of 2020. So what I did is I did that same thing for the received date. I also did it for the started date. And then total estimates is an automatic function here that's going to get summed at the end of the page. And right now you can't see that because I have the totals are in a dark font. So let's go over here to the formatting pane and let's go to the totals. And instead of making that a black color, let's make that a white color. And now we can see our totals is 57 jobs and 378,000 and change in total estimates, which matches the 57 and 378 on this page here by creating that measure. So hope this helps some of you out that actually have kind of the same issue that I have in a lot of my models, is where I have multiple dates in one fact table, and I'm trying to do some pretty interesting measures to create things just like that you've seen in this video today. So I hope this helps you in your future DAX endeavors. Until next time, thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Enterprise DNA TV. If you enjoyed the content covered in this particular tutorial, please throw the video a like. It really helps us and we really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Enterprise DNA TV channel. We have a huge amount of content coming out all the time from myself and a range of content creators, all dedicated to improving the way that you use Power BI and the Power Platform. Lastly, check out Enterprise DNA's website. Plenty of resources and further learning that you can access very easily. All the best. Take care.